Hello and good morning, everybody. It's me, Julian. Today I would like to continue my close reading of Slavoj Žižek's book, Surplus Enjoyment, A Guide for the Non-Perplexed, by focusing on a seemingly simple question, namely, how to be free, or how to be free according to Slavoj Žižek. The question, therefore, is, how do we emancipate ourselves? And I'll give you the answer right off the bat. Žižek's argument, as simple as it seems, is that you are free at the exact moment that you realize that you were always already free. Now, this might seem like an unsatisfying answer, but if we take it apart step by step, it actually has quite profound philosophical and psychoanalytic consequences. And so that's what I'm going to try to do in the following 10 minutes or so. But first, if you'd like to learn more about Žižek, then please consider downloading my complete guide to Žižek ebook, which you can find on Patreon. Okay, let's begin. How to be free according to Slavoj Žižek. So before I begin, it's important to note that for Žižek, the question of emancipation or freedom is one that is synonymous with self-knowledge, which is to say Žižek's basic argument is that you are free at the moment that you know yourself, that you have been able to cast off any illusions about yourself, and that you have achieved full self-knowledge. This means that for Žižek, emancipation is essentially a Cartesian question, which is to say that the Cartesian cogito had as its central project to achieve self-transparency, the self-transparent subject. And Žižek holds true to this ideal. For Žižek, the self-transparent subject is the subject who is most free because it is the subject who knows itself in its truth. And so it's important to note that when Žižek says, here's how we can be free, what he's essentially arguing is here's how we can know ourselves. So what does it mean to know ourselves? Well, Žižek has a pretty basic definition as to what he means by ourselves. He writes, quote unquote, it is the realization that we are a materialization of a phantasmatic image in all its inconsistency. Now, that's quite a dense statement. We are a materialization of a phantasmatic image in all its inconsistency. But you can actually break that down into an even simpler formula, which is, it is the realization that we are a materialization of the big other, which is to say that we are the very gap between what we believe to be ourselves and our supposed symbolic identity. Let me give you a very simple and accessible example. Let's say that somebody believes that you are really brave and strong and courageous. Even if you know yourself to be not that, even if you know that you are somebody who struggles, nevertheless, you will want to perform so as to correspond to the other's expectation. For example, if you're a parent, you know that your child believes that you are all-knowing and all-powerful. You yourself, of course, realize that you are not all-knowing and all-powerful, and yet on behalf of the child, you nevertheless pretend to be this person so as to uphold their illusion of you, their belief in you. Therefore, here we already see how you are caught. You are caught between who you believe yourself to really be versus your symbolic identity, how other people perceive you, what they expect you to be. And Žižek's basic argument is that there is no true self. The true self is precisely the subject caught in this gap between the symbolic identity and the belief in the true or authentic self. Žižek likes to use the movie Solaris by Tarkovsky to stage this example, and I'll give you a very quick rundown of his illustration. So in the film Solaris, we have a planet that is like a brain almost. It's a planet that is able to project and give material form to the fantasies of the astronauts visiting it. And what's crucial here is that it's not just their fantasies, but in a sense, it's also their repressed trauma. Case in point, an astronaut, the protagonist, arrives, and all of a sudden, a woman materializes next to him in bed. This isn't just any woman. This is, in fact, the material apparition of his deceased wife, his wife who had committed suicide. And at first, he's horrified by this, and he tries to get rid of her, shooting her into space, etc., and yet she keeps on reappearing. And essentially, eventually he starts living side by side with her. This woman is a materialization of this telekinetic projection of the planet Solaris as what Žižek calls an id machine that represents in material form both the desire and the trauma of the astronaut in the form of his wife. Now, the crucial moment in this film is when the apparition of the wife realizes that she herself has no substantial identity, that she is an apparition, a reflection, a dream of the other's desire. And spoilers for Solaris, this is when she attempts to kill herself. Again, if you will. This is when she tries to take in a substance that will render her apparition no longer possible. Now, on the one hand, we could take Jungian reading, which Tarkovsky himself adopts, which is to say that the film is about the projection of one's own desires and repressed longings, and woman therefore emerges as a symptom of man, etc. But Žižek says that we could also advocate a different reading, which is to say, for Žižek, the figure of the woman who realizes that she has no substantial identity as to herself, save for being that which is caught within the repression of trauma and desire of the other, this itself is true emancipation. The moment in which the woman realizes that she has no authentic identity, save for her being caught in the web of the other's desire, this is true self-knowledge. This is true awareness. Therefore, Žižek says that we can read Solaris and the plight of this woman as a recipe, if you will, as to how we might achieve emancipation ourselves, realizing that we have no substantial identity save for being caught within the web of the other's desire. And here Žižek likes to actually bring Freud and Lacan into the picture. No surprise. In fact, one of the key arguments that Žižek makes hinges upon the Lacanian reinterpretation of the Freudian dream of the father, which I'll try to simplify here quickly. So the Freudian dream of the father works like this. A son who is nursing his dying father has a dream about his father, in which the father does not realize that he is dead. Now, the Freudian interpretation is that the father doesn't know not only that he is not dead, but strictly speaking, the formula is the father doesn't know that the son wishes him to be dead, which is to say that the son's guilt about his anticipation of his father's death therefore comes back to haunt him in his dream. However, the Lacanian reading of this dream is much more radical. Lacan essentially says that what comes back in the dream, the father who does not know that he is dead, is not the figure of guilt meant to haunt the son. Instead, it is the figure who represents a certain deadlock within the son himself. How does that work? Well, think about it. The father in the dream does not know that he is dead. And so in a sense, it is up to the son to kill the father. How does the son kill the father in the dream? By telling him that he is dead. Essentially, therefore, the knowledge as to the fact that the father has no substantial identity, that he is a mere apparition, that he is already dead, has to be inflicted upon the father by the son. Therefore, the traumatic content of the dream is that the father is the subject who is supposed to know. What is he supposed to know? He is supposed to know that he is already dead. And yet, nevertheless, he asks of us, the dreamer, the son, to believe in him as if he were real. He therefore confronts the son not only with the repressed guilt as to his wish of the father's death, but precisely the problem or the deadlock as to the fact that the son has to kill the father by telling him that he is already dead, thereby making him the culprit. This is the true kernel as to the son's guilt, not his passive anticipation of the father's death, but his active complicity in wishing his father dead. However, from an even more radical Lacanian dimension, we have to invert this. It's not just that the father doesn't know that he is dead and wants the son to believe in him on his behalf. It's the other way around. It's that, strictly speaking, we ourselves are already dead. We ourselves have no substantial identity, hence why we require other people to believe in us in our stead. Therefore, in a sense, true subjective destitution, true emancipation, is precisely to traverse the fundamental fantasy, to go beyond the idea of an authentic self, and to realize that we were always already simply the materialization of a phantasmatic apparition caught in the other's desire. Which is to say, to simplify somewhat, the problem is not that I only exist in the other's fantasy. The problem is that the other only exists in the fantasy which is me. This means that we are caught up in each other. Us and the other, you and the other, are caught up in each other's desire against the backdrop of the big other, who, as Lacan already said, is therefore purely virtual, who does not exist. This means that the problem is not that you are a dream of the other. The problem is that the other is a dream which is you, in which you imagine you exist properly. Now, what does this mean for emancipation? Essentially, it means that to be free from the other would make you yourself cease to exist. Or it would mean that, secondly, to insist that there is an other would make you the perverted subject of the other's enjoyment. They are real, I am not, I simply serve their enjoyment. However, the psychoanalytic move is to introduce a third option, the option of self-knowledge or emancipation, which is to say that the subject is itself the name of its own symptom, of its own irreducible impossibility. We are irreducibly caught in the web of the other. This means that there is no authentic self underneath the mask. The mask is itself the symptom which is the subject, or to put it in Lacanian terms, this is the subject of the unconscious. Emancipation is therefore not emancipation from the other, but the realization that the other was never there in the first place, and so there was nothing to be free from. Hence why you are already free. You just don't realize it yet. And this is Žižek's key argument about emancipation. To become a self-transparent subject, a subject that acquires self-knowledge, is not to unearth the authentic content as to yourself, free from illusion, but to realize how you exist only within illusion, which is to say you're not looking for the content of your authentic self, you're looking for the content in the form as to the irreducible impossibility of achieving said authentic self. That is the psychoanalytic turn, to read symptom as subject. Therefore, the subject of the unconscious is the subject that lies within the irreducible illusion of the other. That is Žižek's argument. How to be free is to realize that you are already free, you just don't realize it yet. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this has helped. If you'd like to learn more about Žižek, please do download my complete guide to Žižek ebook on Patreon. I will see you tomorrow.